Got it.
There we go. All right, everyone. I'm Linda from the Upper Saddle River Library. I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. We have Evan Weiner. He's a veteran broadcaster. Like I said, I've listened to a few of his lectures, and you are going to see the wealth of knowledge that he has and the stories that he's going to tell us. But tonight, it's about the Super Bowl. So where it started from, and slowly segueing to where we are today. So with that, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Linda, for inviting me, and thank Brenda and Denise and Matthew and Merrill and Richard and Upper Saddle River Library for being here tonight. My name is Evan Weiner, and I actually got my start in radio in 1971. And you go about 9 miles north on 45. When you go to Dairy Queen, make a left. There was WRKL radio in Mount Ivy, and that is where I started a high school show at Spring Valley High School, which I think is about 5 miles from where you are right now. I was in 11th grade, and that started in 1971. 1978, I ended up on WNEW radio. I had 2 stints at WNEW, one doing news and one doing sports in 1978 and 1988, 78 through 81. The guy I'm speaking to there is Phil Simms. That's 1982. That's at Pace University here in Westchester County. And Phil was the quarterback of the New York Giants. And I'm asking him some question, and he's more intent on eating his banana than answering my question. And when I do see Phil every once in a while, I do ask him if he still eats bananas. Phil is out there. He is way, way out there, and I have some stories about him, but I'm here to talk about the Super Bowl. But he was the MVP of the Super Bowl 4 years after that picture was taken. Super Bowl is an interesting cultural piece in American history because it's America's excuse to throw a midwinter weekend party. The Super Bowl was created after the United States Congress passed legislation allowing the merger of the American and National Football Leagues. Now, the merger was tacked on to an anti-inflation bill because no senator in their right mind, no House of Representative member in their right mind is going to say, yeah, I want that inflation. I really want that inflation. And so this is tucked into this anti-inflation bill, and it creates the Super Bowl. It's signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson, November 8th, 1966. Now, that's the thumbnail version of this. There's a lot more that went into it. But before I do that, the game is in Englewood, California, and that is a week from Sunday. And Englewood is just outside the 405. You get off on the Manchester Boulevard exit, and you go right down there, and you'll see where the stadium is. The Fabulous Forum is out there too. And it's partly United States Secret Service and 49 other agencies. And they've been on the ground for a year and a half, securing Southern California, locking down as much as they can to make sure that that movie, Black Sunday, never happens in real life. The Super Bowl is a special events assessment rating level 1 event. Like I said, 50 agencies been working for the last year and a half to make sure the event is secure. How much are you paying for it? Well, taxpayers are paying for it. The NFL's not. They don't take a nickel out of their pocket. And there's no word on how much it really costs taxpayers to provide security for this event. Secret Service is there, FBI is there, FEMA is there, TSA is there, the Customs and Border Patrol, local police, CHIPS will be there, the LA police, the Englewood police, the Beverly Hills cop will be there too. And so they'll all be there helping secure this thing, and tickets are going for like $6,000-7,000 a seat. The 1964-65 AFL All Star Game, which was never played, is a key part of this entire story. And you might want to notice this picture because there are 4 African Americans in this picture. Butch Bird, who played with Buffalo. I don't know who the guy with his head down looking at what appears to be an airplane ticket. I'm not sure who that is. That's Earl Faison with the fedora in the back row, the big guy, Curtis McClinton, who played with the Kansas City Chiefs with the tickets in his hand. Quick background for the Super Bowl and how it came about. Well, Civil Rights Act of 1964, Jim Crow, New Orleans, players boycott, Louisiana Senator Russell Long, Louisiana Representative Hale Boggs, Cokie Roberts' father, Brooklyn Representative Emmanuel Seller, all part of the Super Bowl creation by accident and also by design. Now, to understand where we're coming from, there's going to be a boycott in 1965. But it's not the first boycott in sports. In fact, boycotts started picking up steam in 1959 with Elgin Baylor of the Minneapolis Lakers saying, I'm not playing in the segregated Charleston, West Virginia, if I can't stay with my teammates in the same hotel, eat in the same restaurant. That's Walter Beach, still around, lawyer. Walter's got to be now about 82, 83 years old. And he's a member of the Boston Patriots in 1960 and 1961. And the Boston Patriots supposed to play a game in New Orleans, preseason game, because back in those days, the American Football League, you paid them, they showed up in the preseason. And also, they wanted to get some information about New Orleans in the event the Oakland Raiders pulled out of San Francisco in 1961 and were looking to go somewhere else, the team. And they were. They almost ended up in Vancouver, and they thought about New Orleans. But Walter Beach didn't care about that. What Walter Beach cared about was hanging out with all of his teammates at the first-class hotel that the Boston Patriots team was staying at and eating with his teammates. And he decides to take a stand. And because he takes a stand, they're fired. He's fired. The Boston Patriots labeled him a troublemaker. He organized a protest among black players against segregated living conditions during the team's road trip, which lasted all of 2 days in New Orleans. So he gets himself fired because he's a troublemaker, because he doesn't want any of that Green Book stuff. And I'm sure you have the Green Book movie in the library. So he doesn't want any of that green stuff. He wants to be with his teammates. Gets fired, but he ends up in Cleveland. 1963, and the guy in the left side, Freddie the Hammer Williamson, who ended up being an actor. My old buddy with the blonde hair, on the right is Jim Otto, next to him Clement Daniels, and Al Davis. Al Davis is the coach of the Oakland Raiders, along with the former New York Titan player Art Powell, who is on one knee. Mobile, Alabama, August 1963. 6 African-American members of the Oakland Raiders refused to play in an exhibition game against the New York Jets at what then was called Ladd Stadium in Mobile. Why? Well, they had segregated seating. It is 1963. It is Mobile, Alabama. It is the Deep South. Mobile had hosted 3 prior American Football League preseason games, 1960, 61, and 62. And Al Davis, he's the rookie head coach of the AFL's Raiders, as he would say, because he was from Brooklyn. Went to Adelphi University on Long Island, where I got to sit and talk to him one day. Anyway, AD decides, hey, Clem Daniels, Art Powell, Bo Robertson, Fred the Hammer Williamson, Proverb Jones, and Eugene White, they may be right on this thing. There should be segregated seating. So he says, it's okay, don't play. In fact, why don't we not play at all? Mobile, Alabama, that's Ladd Peebles Stadium today. And here is Ray Schuessler. Ray Schuessler is the Ladd Stadium manager, Mobile. He says, and listen to his language, we don't want 4 boys from Oakland telling us how to run our stadium. We're going to integrate quietly. Now, we're going to go ahead as in the past for other exhibition games here, except there was never another exhibition game here. Clement Daniels, the running back for the Raiders, said, I wanted to play in Mobile before an integrated crowd and contribute in a small way to breaking down these needless prejudices. The game was played in Oakland, not Mobile, and the AFL never returned to Mobile. Now, the 1965 Senior Bowl was integrated, although organizers reluctantly did so. This year's Senior Bowl will be played, I guess, on Saturday, and it is integrated. That was the game that almost died in 1965 because they didn't want to desegregate. Cookie Gilchrist is one of the guys who leads the American Football League All Star Game boycott. Why New Orleans? Why was the AFL going to New Orleans? Why? Because they were looking to add a team. And the NFL was looking to add a team, and they would go to Atlanta, and the AFL said, okay, New Orleans, a big city in the South, it's a port, there's some money there, let's go. And it's football area. And New Orleans leader said the city was going to welcome the AFL All Stars, 22 black players included, with open arms. Segregation, nah, in the past. Jim Crow, that's just ending. And the city desperately wanted a professional football team. In the American Football League, whites and blacks were pretty much equal, as you could see from this 1963 AFL All Star Game program. Forget Henry Stram up there. Well, Henry would never let you forget him. But anyway, that's Henry Stram there. He was one of the coaches, Pop Ivy the other coach. But if you look at the 8 players, 5 of them were white, 3 of them were African American. The AFL was the only league at the time, Major League Baseball, National Basketball Association, National Football League, to truly embrace the African American athletes as an equal on the field with white players. Irv Cross was my old buddy. He passed away last year. Last time I talked to him, he said, yeah, Evan, I'm 79 years old. I can't complain, though. I'm just a broken down old football player, but I can't complain. He said, by the way, how are you? I said, I'm doing well. He said, what you up to? I said, I'm writing, I'm not writing because this was written. I'm just tweaking the Super Bowl talk because I'm kind of bored saying the same thing all the time. And he says, oh, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to talk about the quota. He said, oh, the quota. He said, hold on a second. So let me think about this. Now, Irv was a rookie with the Philadelphia Eagles in 1961. So let me think about it for a second. And he says, Tim Brown, Ted Dean, Clarence Peaks, and me. There you go. The quota. 4 African-American players per team. 2 guys, 2 rooms. All you need is 2 rooms for the 2 of them, and we hang together. He said, yeah, you're right. My first year, there was a quota. Quota in the National Football League, but not in the American Football League. NFL scouts went to watch players from the big-time schools and conferences. The AFL, they looked for players with a different background, the historic black universities, such as Grambling or Bethune-Cookman or Prairie View or North Carolina A&T or Morgan State in Baltimore or Southern University and A&M College or Texas A&I. They went and got players there. And some of those players should have been Hall of Famers, except they played in the AFL like Otis Taylor. Ironically, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 destroyed the black college football programs. The best players could attend the big schools, Alabama, Louisiana State University, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, SMU, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Georgia, North South Carolina, Florida State, and Miami. And the black schools lost the really good players. Abner Haynes. Abner Haynes is my friend. He lives in Dallas. Abner is about 84. Said he was the first African-American player ever to play college football on a weekly basis in Texas in 1956, the year I was born. And he said to me one day, hey, I need help with an autobiography. Can you help me? And I said, kind of busy, but let's talk. And I realized that it was going to be too unwieldy for me to do. But he gave me some stories and gave me a story about the American Football League All Star Game and also some stories about Jim Crow. He was the captain of the Dallas Texans in 1961. Green Book stories. But for the purpose of me being here today, I'm just going to talk about the Super Bowl. Or rather, the Super Bowl. AFL players were told, you're gonna be okay. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to come down. Everything's going to be fine. And they come down and they find out that there are no cabs waiting for them, the African-American players. White players, all the cabs they want. Cookie Gilchrist got a cab because he was with Jack Kemp, his Buffalo teammate, who's also the president of the American Football League Players Association. These guys are left behind. They're left behind because there were no cabs for them. So finally, Kemp calls up Bud Adams, the owner of the Houston Oilers, co-founder of the league, calls the governor of Louisiana, the mayor of New Orleans, saying, our guys are out there. They don't have cabs. And somebody says, well, we'll send the colored cabs for the colored players. Abner had a woman operating the elevator. After they get from the airport to the Hotel Roosevelt, they check in. And it's an old hand-cranked elevator. Kind of gate, the door swings open. There's a gate, somebody's sitting there, swings open the gate, and it's up and down with the elevator. And Abner, these are Abner's words. They're not my words. It's all Abner. They had a woman operating the elevator, and she said, you monkeys, come on in, get to the back, referring to Haynes and David Grayson. Finally, we had about 10 or 12 guys in my room. We're talking sensibly. We're going to stay together. This was just another test. We had no leverage. We weren't playing for money, but we were playing for progress. Football players took the lead. Yeah, in some instances, like Wally Triplett at Penn State University and Dennis Hoagland, except it was the white players that allowed them to go to Dallas for the 1948 Cotton Bowl. They were with Penn State, and the white players said, we're all Penn State. So, yeah, I guess in a sense, football players took the lead in the Elgin Baylor thing in 1959 with the Lakers. Places like Atlanta, New Orleans, Miami, death holes. Dave Grayson couldn't get a drink at the bar, or white teammates in New Orleans were there for us, like him. It's Jack Kemp. He was running for president of the United States in 1979, and I was over at WGRC Radio, 1300 on the dial, which you could have gotten in Upper Saddle River, New Jersey. West directional single, but they couldn't get him in Spark Hill, except I'm also working for WNEW at the time, and he's making a campaign stop and do my one-on-one interview with him. He looked at that picture many years later and said, what happened to your hair? So what happened to your wig? It's white. 2003, there's Jack Kemp and my son. He was white. Haynes, one of the things we, the AFL, needed was the unity of the white and black players for our new league. When the white players, Jack Kemp, Jerry Mays, who was our Kansas City defensive leader, and 4 or 5 other guys heard about what was happening, their character showed, and my teammates were looking after me. Teammates like him, Ron Mix, who I spoke to in 2014 because I knew him, and he could uniquely answer a question for me when Donald Sterling, the NBA Los Angeles Clippers owner, it came out on TMZ, Harvey Levin, that his mistress, he told his mistress, V. Stellano, got her 15 minutes of fame, don't bring black guys to our games anymore. And that got out. The LA Clippers players were upset at the owner and threatened to boycott the Olympics. The owner was kicked out after all the advertisers and marketing partners pulled. So I figured Ron Mix is a good guy to ask about what's going on. And he told me about the 65 game. We were aware that New Orleans was hosting the game to demonstrate to the American Football League and the National Football League, New Orleans, could support the football franchise. The last thing we wanted to do was assist them in demonstrating they could support the franchise. A boycott was the only alternative for the players, and that got this guy really, really upset. His name is Dave Dixon, and he was going to be one of the owners of the American Football League team that was going to be awarded at halftime of that All Star Game back in January 1965, and they were going to play in New Orleans at Tulane Stadium. But the boycott, 24 hours, that's all it was, 24 hours. The boycott, players leave. They go home, then go to Houston to play the game. And Dave Dixon is irate. And he tells the New York Times the boycotters had unjustly sullied New Orleans' reputation, complaining their militant action would not only damage the city, but would greatly retard efforts by men of goodwill of both races to achieve harmony. New Orleans is on the outside looking in. Eventually, New Orleans would become a political pawn. Super Bowl would rise out of the ashes of the New Orleans boycott. The American Football League and the National Football League announced a merger plan on June 8, 1966, but the two entities couldn't become one, couldn't get married without an antitrust exemption from Congress. And who better to lobby for that antitrust exemption is that guy with the $500 suit. As I look at him, and somebody must have said something because I'm smiling and he's smiling. Although they may be smiling because I'm wearing a tie. It was June, July. It was hot. Lower Manhattan, Southern District, Foley Square. And I'm wearing jeans. Hey, that's cool, right? Anyway, so Pete Rozelle and me, that's Fortune magazine, 1986. And so he goes down to Washington. His job, get a merger. Sports commissioner was a hardened political lobbyist. And one thing I must say about Pete, he helped me an awful lot understanding the business and politics of sports, which is kind of what this is about. So he's an old hand on Capitol Hill by the summer of 1966. Speaking of old, there's Emanuel Seller, the Democrat from Brooklyn, who I believe started his term during the second year of the War of 1812. Actually, it was 1920, but he was old. In 1961, Rozelle lobbied the House and Brooklyn, New York Democrat Emanuel Seller in an attempt to win a limited antitrust exemption so the National Football League could sell the league's 14 franchises as one entity to a television network. The Sports Broadcast Act of 1961, signed into law by John Kennedy September 30th that year. It's mostly Emanuel Seller who did the work in the House. Estes Kiefhauer one day held a one-day hearing in the Senate. And that allowed the NFL to bundle the 14 franchises and sell a package of games to a TV network. And there were only two that mattered in those days, CBS or NBC. ABC was just like 1/3 of the network at that point. The law helped propel the NFL into a different economic orbit. Wellington and Tim Mara all of a sudden got a lot of money. So George Halas, so Daniel Reeves in Los Angeles, Halas in Chicago. More money than they ever thought they could get for the game. Now, these two guys, you would say, nah, there's absolutely no way that they're an integral part of the Super Bowl, but they were. The guy on the left is Russell Long. Russell Long was the fifth-ranking Democrat when the Democrats held the majority in the Senate in 1966, and to his right is the president, Lyndon Johnson. Neither the Louisiana Democrat, Russell Long, who was the Senate's majority whip and chairman of the Senate Financial Committee, nor the Louisiana Congressman Hale Boggs were very excited about the planned merger. Neither saw the merger benefiting New Orleans, as the city had neither an AFL team nor an NFL team. Now, why did Rozelle pick these guys out? Well, these guys had some power. And if you look at it, it's the entire congressional delegation of Louisiana, maybe some in Arkansas, maybe some in Oklahoma, maybe some in Eastern Texas, even though they had the Cowboys and the Houston Oilers in those days. Maybe in Mississippi, maybe in Alabama, maybe, just maybe in Kentucky and also Tennessee. So those votes you couldn't count on. But if you got these two guys on board, you could count on them. But they couldn't get those guys on board because the merger would not benefit New Orleans. 24 teams. That's it. They're capping it at 24. And it's 24 teams in, at this point, 22 cities. Like Shea Stadium in Queens, New York. Now, there was a plan. The plan was pretty simple. Jets have Joe Namath. Jets owned by Sonny Werleman, who was Elizabeth Taylor's PR person, Johnny Carson's PR person as well. So he knew the entertainment industry and sent my wife a great letter after she sung the national anthem at Madison Square Garden in 1984, saying basically, anytime you want to sing, just give me a ring. And she did. But anyway, so you got the Jets. They're going out to LA. You got the Los Angeles Rams, Daniel Reeves. Well, he's going to go down to San Diego. In San Diego, it's Barron Hilton. He'll go to New Orleans because he's got some interest there in New Orleans, business interests, hotels. And the Oakland Raiders, because they're in the San Francisco territory, will send them to Portland, Oregon, or Seattle. Emanuel Seller said absolutely not, partly because his district abutted Shea Stadium. And Rozelle knew that Seller did them a great big favor in 1961. And when Seller said no teams are going to merge because all those people from Brooklyn who were football fans who couldn't get tickets at Yankee Stadium for the Giants. Well, hell, we'll go over to Shea Stadium and we'll watch Joe Namath and the Jets. And that is what happened. New Orleans, still on the outside looking in. Screw that. That's the Mardi Gras from now 3 years ago. The last full Mardi Gras, where I was 3 years ago. Screw that. New Orleans in 2018. A bad call. A bad call may have cost him the Super Bowl, and that guy was also wearing he was wearing glasses, dark glasses, talking about the officials. So Rozelle and the NFL owners relent. They work out a deal with Boggs, and they place a team in New Orleans. You give us the votes, we'll give you the team. Congress approved the AFL NFL merger, giving the two competitors an antitrust exemption, which was added on as that rider to an anti-inflation tax bill on October 21st, 1966. Nobody was voting for inflation, and there was a drop-dead date there. You got to do it within 10 days or we're going to pull. But 10 days later is Halloween. 11 days later is All Saints Day. Now, if you ever wondered if Congress created the Super Bowl, this letter from William Clay Ford, who is the Detroit Lions owner in 1966, gives you the smoking gun that Congress did create the Super Bowl. The Honorable Gerald R. Ford Jr., House of Representatives, Washington, D.C. Dear Mr. Ford, should be Congressman Ford, but dear Mr. Ford, a sincere thank you for your able assistance in bringing about congressional approval of the NFL-AFL merger. The passage of this bill, capital letter, you don't need the capital letter there, will now allow merger plans to go ahead full speed. Important also that the first championship game between the two leagues, capital L, don't need that there, will now be played for real in January. So on behalf of our club, we say thank you for your wholehearted support. Congress created the Super Bowl. And particularly him, Hale Boggs. The NFL awarded its 16th franchise to New Orleans on All Saints Day, November 1st, 1966. Lyndon Johnson signed the bill into law on November 8th with this pen, which is forever enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. And it's all about money because it was actually a great deal for NFL owners, particularly Wellington and Tim Mara with the Giants. The league got an $8 million expansion fee from the New Orleans owner, John Meekum, split between 15 teams, which meant about $475,000 per team. Additionally, the New York Jets ownership gave Sonny Werble, Phil Island, Leon Hess, that group, gave the Maras $10 million for, quote-unquote, invading the territory, which Harry Wismer actually did back in 1959-60 when he owned the Titans. The Oakland Raiders handed over $8 million to the San Francisco 49ers. They, too, invaded an NFL territory. And then the AFL, this year's Super Bowl contender, Cincinnati. The AFL expands into Cincinnati in 1968. Backers pay $7.5 million. Right now, you might be able to get a team for $4 billion. The Denver Broncos are on the block. And that $7.5 million goes back to the 16 NFL owners, which means another $475,000. So we'll round it up. The 16 NFL owners, 14 of them, right? 13 of them, rather. 13 of them got roughly $1 million. The New York Giants, they ended up roughly with about $11 million for doing nothing. The Wellington Mara, Tim Mara people did nothing. And $9 million for the San Francisco 49ers from Oakland. Now, here's a trick question. I asked this the other day. I said, you go to a Super Bowl, because I was doing this live the other day. And I said, I'll give you time. Did Vince Lombardi ever win a Super Bowl? Yes or no? Pretty simple question. And yeah, down by exit 16, there is the Vince Lombardi service area, rest area on the New Jersey Turnpike. But if you want to type it in, go ahead, type it in. I'll give you a couple seconds. That's all I could sing before I end up paying Merv Griffin money. I'll give you the answer a little later, but you can still think about it. Did Vince Lombardi ever win a Super Bowl? Mickey Mouse versus the NFL. Green Bay and Kansas City play in the first American Football League, National Football League World Championship game on January 15th, 1967. Now, the Green Bay coach, Vince Lombardi, former Englewood, New Jersey teacher, didn't want to play the game. His team won the NFL championship. Why am I playing the Mickey Mouse League? Now, I got a question for you because it isn't talked about these days. I mean, it's old slang, but it lasted to the 1980s. Now, when I was a kid growing up in the 1960s, that's a Mickey Mouse thing. Mickey Mouse thing. Mickey Mouse thing. You know, put it down. Wasn't any good. Wasn't any good at all. Do you know how much that rodent is really worth? That rodent's worth at least $80 billion. $80 billion. ABC is called the house the mouse built. So why were people deriving things by calling it a Mickey Mouse thing? Empty seats in the Los Angeles Coliseum. That's Len Dawson, the Kansas City Chiefs against the Green Bay Packers with lots of empty seats. Something you will not see in Englewood a week from Sunday. Englewood about 5.5, 6 miles as the crow flies in about an hour from the LA Memorial Coliseum as you drive. The game played the first one, January 15th, 1967, 94,000 seat LA Coliseum. The ticket price is $12, $10, $6. Now, even if you adjusted about $150, about $130, and about $70, if you were buying it today. 33,000 empty seats. Last time a Super Bowl or the World Championship game was not a sellout. And Vince Lombardi was playing for the pride of CBS. And my friend, and one time, well, kind of co-worker, he was building something called the Sports Radio Network in 1984, and he hired me, and he hired Eric Moffat, a guy by the name of Hal Uplinger. And he was the Green Bay Packers producer. By the way, I normally don't talk about just TV producers. Hal invented instant replay on TV in 1963. And so we're building this little radio network. And he calls me one day. He says, Evan, I said, what? He says, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. Hey, it's a right answer. It's a right answer, Beryl. But anyway, Hal says, Evan, I'm leaving. So what are you doing? He said, I'm going to 1990. In 1985, they're going to be doing this concert with a lot of rock musicians, and they're going to be raising money. So after I'm done, we'll talk. If you want to know more about that, it's called Live Aid, and Hal Uplinger was the technical guy behind it. And go up to the Smithsonian Institute website, type in Hal Uplinger, and there's a whole 90-minute conversation with Hal. It's worth the 90 minutes because it's really what he pulled off technologically in 1985 was immense. But anyway, so he's working for CBS, KNX out in LA, but he's the Green Bay Packers producer. And he's telling me Bill Paley, who founded CBS back in 1927 in Philadelphia, leaned on Lombardi, absolutely leaned on Lombardi because he was coaching for CBS's pride. CBS against NBC. The first game was played 26 days after the final approval of the merger between the National Football League and the American Football League. CBS and NBC televised it using the same television feed, but with different announcers and different advertisers. Unfortunately, neither NBC nor CBS thought the game was of any historic value. And I don't know, NBC may have sent the tape down to Burbank so they could, I don't know, tape over it with Hollywood Squares, right? They had Hollywood Squares back in those days. Or maybe sent it to New York and taped over it and had Jeopardy. By the way, very few Art Fleming Jeopardy tapes exist because they taped over everything. And CBS, I don't know, who knows? Maybe it was Carol Burnett show it became, I don't know. Unfortunately, both networks erased the tape of the game, and no complete copies have ever surfaced in the past 55 years. The NFL is willing to pay $10 million for a copy if someone has a copy, and they reached out to former military veterans, seeing if anybody snuck any of the reels home and had them up in the attic, but nobody's claimed that $10 million. So Unfortunately, we may never see the full presentation of the game. Meanwhile, Jerry Kramer, big number 64, Jerry Kramer of the Green Bay Packers. Cosell liked him. I was friendly with Cosell and his grandkids, Colin and Justin. Colin's the Mets PA announcer. Anyway, I was talking to Frank Gifford years ago, and he mentioned that he announced that first Super Bowl, said Jerry Kramer to me in 1988. Gifford said he was fairly cool, fairly calm, relaxed, and he went over to put his arm on Vince's shoulder, and Lombardi was shaking like a leaf. Gifford was Lombardi's favorite player of all time, with Lombardi being the offensive coordinator of the Giants. Gifford said that really made me nervous. Gifford, of course, was the CBS announcer and represented the NFL in CBS. Money, money, money. David Sarnoff threw $35 million at the AFL in 1964, starting in 1965, and he told Sonny Werblin and the others connected with the AFL, here's your money, go out and buy players. And Werblin, of course, bought Joe Namath, $427,000 for 3 years. CBS and NBC charged $42,000 for a 30-second spot. I saw it somewhere today. One of the trade magazines said $8 million for 30 seconds for this Super Bowl. It's like, what? But that's what they could get because they reach eyeballs, 18 to 34-year-old men. Two networks paid $9.5 million to televise the game. The leagues couldn't even agree on which ball to use. When Green Bay was on offense, they used the Wilson Duke football, the Duke, named after the Duke of Wellington, or Wellington Mara, the Giants owner. When Kansas City had the ball, they used the AFL sanctioned, and cause I'm from Queens and from New York City, the Spalding. How many of you had Spaldings? The Spalding J5V. It was Ford, the NFL sponsor, against Chrysler, the AFL sponsor. It was CBS, the NFL network, against ABC, the AFL network, CBS, the NFL network. NFL establishment sports writers, Tex Ball of the Sports Illustrated franchise, against NBC's Kurt Gowdy. They almost came to blows during the Namath game in '69. It just wasn't a game. It was a rivalry. But I'm going to say this very slowly. Dallas Cowboys Vice President or President Texas E. Schramm, a guy who, when you shook fingers with him, you made sure you had all 5 fingers after you shook hands with him, and 90% of what he said was hyperbole, like this. That subsided, and as Tex once told me, the Super Bowl kind of put the icing on the cake, and the interest in the National Football League kept rolling until it was the most popular spectator sport in the United States, except that happened in '65. And the first Super Bowl wasn't until January 15th, 1967. But hey, I listened to Tex more than I'd like to. Oh, the Super Bowl name. Some people, one person, Al Davis, began calling the American Football League, National Football League World Championship game the Super Bowl in 1968. Now, no one could think of a proper name. In fact, Roselle once told me when we were just talking one day, he said he thought that the Kansas City owner, Lamar Hunt's idea of calling it the Super Bowl was corny. Hunt founded the AFL in 1959. I looked at Roselle, I said, corny. You got to remember, I'm about 30 years old at the time. I said, corny? He says, yeah, like Razzle Dazzle and Super Duper. Give him the old Razzle Dazzle. I said, you were born in 1926, were you? He said, yeah, I was. I was born in 1956. Give them the old razzle dazzle because it's super duper, but that sounds corny. On July 25th, 1966, a letter to the NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle. Lamar Hunt wrote, I've kiddingly called it the Super Bowl, which can obviously be improved upon. About 30 years later, I sat down with Lamar and we had this little talk. It was the spur of the moment. It was one of the spur of the moment things. No one ever said, what are we going to call it? It's one of those things that just came out of the mouth. It wasn't too inspired. Or was it? Was it? I'm a kid. It's 1966. He has kids, same age as me. Me in Woodside, Queens, in our little apartment. Didn't have much money, but could afford the Super Bowl. Him and his palatial estate. And he's watching his children play with a ball when he first uttered the words. They each had a Super Bowl that my wife had given to them. And they were always talking about them. And I just used the expression Super Bowl. And it was an accidental thing. I had a blue one. I had a blue one. I loved it. Threw it against the wall. It bounced all over the place. All over the place. All over the place. As far as the Whammo Super Bowl, shelf life was considerably less than the Super Bowl. It was a toy made of Zectron, chemical engineer. Norman Stingley found that when formed at 50,000 pounds of pressure, Zectron becomes uncontrollably bouncy. When Whammo began producing a ball made of Zectron, or Whammo began producing a ball made of Zectron in 1964. After only a few years, the double top secret, I remember those commercials, double top secret, formula for Zectron was copied by Whammo's competitors, and the Super Bowl ball floundered. It was out of production by 1976. To have hair again. See, me and Joe, actually, Bruce still has a head of hair. So me and Joe could talk about that because we don't. But he chooses to do one thing and I chose to go another way. Anyway, Broadway Joe, 1988. Wingfoot Golf Course, Mamaroneck, New York, where the U.S. Open is played. But they're having this big party for the 20th anniversary of the New York Jets winning the Super Bowl. And behind Bruce is Weeb Eubank, and behind Joe, the coach of the Jets. Nobody talks about Lou Michaels. Nobody talks about Lou Michaels at all. He was a three-time loser during that Super Bowl III. Lou Michaels remembers January 6, 1969. Lou is just relaxing with some of his Baltimore Colts teammates in a, let's say, tavern in Fort Lauderdale. And Joe Namath happens to stumble into that tavern with Jim Hudson. And Jim was the defense back with the New York Jets. They stumble in, and Joe spots Lou because he's the spitting image of Walt Michaels, the Jets defensive coordinator, Lou Michaels' brother. So here comes Joe, and here comes Lou. I must say, Joe is a very cocky individual. I never expected that from Joe when he walked into the place. He had a fur coat on. I'll never forget it. A fur coat down in Miami. And he points it over to me, and instead of saying, "Hi, I'm Joe Namath," I thought he was going to introduce himself and say hello. He points over to me and says, "We're going to kick the out of you. I'm going to do it." And the next day, he tells the assembled press and Gertie and Sadie from the Bronx that he's going to do that. Take a look at that picture. Take a real close look at that picture. Can you imagine Tom Brady in a Jay's Lounge with the logo of his team on the towel? Notice he's got a towel with the logo. And he's sitting on the beach talking to the assembled people like Dr. Z, Paul Zimmerman, Larry Fox, Jerry Green. And these two women are, "Hey, Gertrude, you think the Marjan ladies back in the Bronx are ever going to believe it's him? It's him. Yeah, it's him." "Oh, I don't know, Sadie. I don't know. I hope somebody takes a picture so we could show the girls." Oh, they took a picture, right? Because that picture was on the back page of the New York Post. It was on the back page of the Daily News. It was in the New York Times the next day. So the girls back in the Bronx, they actually knew that this was going on. And, there's that woman, she's sitting on her Jay's Lounge, just looking at her. And then there's this guy there. I'm from Midtown. I'm a Garmento. They're my view. I can't see. They're in my way. Just imagine that conversation on the beach. Namath makes the game important. The New York Jets Baltimore Colts game is the turning point. Namath guarantees the Jets win, and he delivers. 16-7 the score there. More importantly, because of Joe and the name change, the Super Bowl III. Super Bowl takes on a new life, and Vince Lombardi never won a Super Bowl. He won 2 AFL NFL World Championship trophies. That's what he won. Oh, if you watch the Super Bowl, you might be at the party next week, or you might be watching for the national anthem singer, or you might be watching for the pregame show and who's doing the entertainment. It is going to be Los Angeles after all this year, actually Englewood, but LA is going to take the credit for it. Although Englewood has put up the money for the stadium, or some of the money for the stadium. It won't get that much back in revenues, but that's another story. There was a flimsy pregame show featuring a marching band. The Apollo 8 astronauts, Frank Borman, William Anders, and Jim Lovell. Apollo 13 joke there. Who just circled the moon 2 weeks earlier and led the crowd in the Pledge of Allegiance. National anthem performed by a trumpet player from Washington, D.C. named Lloyd Geisel. The Florida A&M University Marching Band performed the halftime show. Back to Lou. Oh, poor Lou. Gets insulted in the bar. Team loses. And then he makes a bet with his brother, the Jets defensive coordinator, Walt Michaels. The winner, gets $13,000. The loser, $8,000. That's what they paid. But here's the bet. Whoever wins the game has to give $5,000 to the local padre in Swoyersville at the church in Swoyersville, Pennsylvania. Jets win. Walt goes right back to Swoyersville, puts all kind of Jets memorabilia and garbage all over the bars or whatever. And where's the money? Well, Walt doesn't come up with the money. Lou Michaels, out of the $8,000 loser share, Walt stiffs the padre, and Lou Michaels pays that $5,000, which caused a lot of problems in the Michaels family. January 12th, 1969, Jets victory, arguably the most important in NFL history, puts the AFL on par with the established league. The NFL suddenly had a hot property, the Super Bowl. And that would go on to become a national holiday, the most watched TV event of the year. January 5th, Lou Michaels had no idea that Chance Barroom Showdown with Joe Namath would lay the foundation, turning the Super Bowl into a national obsession. And Tom Brady, who retired the other day with his trophy from last year, Bruce Arians, the coach of the Tampa Bay Bucks, with the Vince Lombardi Trophy. Lombardi dies in 1970. He doesn't win the Lombardi Trophy. It's a Tiffany Trophy that he won. They never won the Lombardi Trophy. And it's named the Lombardi Trophy after he died of cancer in 1970. Washington coach. Which you probably don't know about Lombardi, and I really didn't know this until there was a book that came out by a guy by the name of Royce Boyles in Wisconsin, and he interviewed me for the book because I did some interviews with Packer players. And it's called Lombardi's Left Side. And I didn't know this until I really read the book because I'm in it and I wanted to see if I was quoted correctly. Anyway, what you might not know about Vince Lombardi, he was a civil rights pioneer. By 1968, the Packers fielded a squad with 13 black athletes, including all pros, Willie Davis and Willie Wood and Dave Robinson, Herb Adderley, and Bob Jeter. He brought Emlyn Tunnell over from the Giants in 1959 to Green Bay to help integrate the area, and he did just that. Those like gay players on his teams in Green Bay and in Washington, and he told the players, lay off of him. His brother was gay, Tom. Meanwhile, the Queen Mary, I speak on cruise ships, and behind that Queen Mary is the Princess cruise ship, and this is, I believe, 2016, and it's the Queen Mary that is responsible for parties. We toured the Queen Mary while we were there. Super Bowl takes on new personality. Super Bowl 7 party on the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California becomes the social event. January 1977, and it begins a new era. Parties surrounding the game. Hey, it's party time, and there's me and John Madden and Dennis Steele. And that's Sync Sound. That's over on the west side of Manhattan at 10th Avenue and 58th Street. And we did Madden's radio show. When you were in the studio with John, it had to be 58 degrees. Couldn't be any warmer. He was uncomfortable if it was over 58 degrees. So we're sitting there. We're freezing in there. We have a coat, and it got a little warmer as we were leaving. But Dennis and I took off our jackets. And so, well, let's do this Madden style. I worked with him for 15 years. Hey, you got your dogs there. You got your wings there. You got your sauce. You got your dip over there. You got your drinks over there. You got your cake. You got your cake. Is there any rye bread? We got the ketchup. We got the mustard. We need the rye bread because John liked ketchup and mustard on rye bread and bagels. Anyway, so it's party time. Every community in America is touched by the Super Bowl, as Super Bowls have, or the Super Bowl. Stores sell big screen TVs. Supermarkets have super sales. And Lori Levy, who worked for the Beer Institute and pigeonholed me one day and said, we got to talk. I said, okay, let's talk. Pointed out just how big the Super Bowl really was. Second biggest food consumption day of the year behind Thanksgiving. And you sell your big screen TVs, increased 500% for demand the week before the Super Bowl. Now with all the supply chain issues and all that, probably not going to happen this year. Beer here. Lori's Beer Institute, where she used to work, has data that suggests the Super Bowl is one of the 7 biggest sales days of the year, only behind Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Eve, and the 4th of July. And that varies from year to year. Newspapers, whatever's left of them, sell advertising for special Super Bowl sections. The Super Bowl is a moneymaker for supermarkets, department stores, bars, snack food makers, breweries, and restaurants. And it's also the springboard for companies to start their annual TV, radio, and print advertising campaigns, because you're going to have a show filled with commercials, because for some reason, people begin to rate the Super Bowl commercials as if it's highbrow entertainment. But they do. The actual game takes second place as a news event. The NFL attempts to draw non-football fans to the TV, and the rating of commercials becomes a major part of what is an entertainment package. And NFL.com runs all those commercials for about 48 hours. The most famous here in Mount Vernon at the stadium, the Coca-Cola ad. That stadium was knocked down a couple of years ago. They're rebuilding it. And it's the kid with the Coke and Mean Joe Green, and that still scores high 43 years later, 43 years after the fact. Now, there were no pantyhose commercials in there, but hey, Joe did make the Super Bowl with the guarantee. It became a hot commodity. And when I did this live, some women said to me, or a number of women said to me, you're not showing us his legs. I said, he's 73 years old with arthritic knees and knee replacement. You really want to see his knees? And they said, no, but here, you got a picture of him anyway. So that's Joe and his pantyhose. And I'll leave it at that. Oh, that's Joe today. And I'm happy I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline. This guy modeled pantyhose. Now he's selling you Medicare Coverage Helpline. He's going to be 79 years old in May. 79. There he is, Joe. Some of the best, the commercials, the Coke commercial, the Apple Sledgehammer commercial, 1984. Only time they ever advertised the Macintosh on TV. And it's kind of a 1984 theme, the Orwellian book. And there's a sledgehammer, and then you see the computer, which cost about $3,000 back then. 1996, Pepsi Coke guy takes a Pepsi. 1998, Tabasco sauce mosquito. 1998, Doritos 3D. 3D Doritos. The Clydesdale Budweisers. Reebok, Terry Tate, office linebacker, and 87-year-old Betty White selling Snickers in 2010. The Arizona problem, it's more than just a game. Far more than just a game. The inaugural season for the Phoenix/Arizona Cardinals in Tempe, now Glendale, Arizona, was in 1998. Bill Bidwell took his St. Louis Cardinals after the 1987 season to Phoenix. But he didn't do well. Didn't do well at all. Lots of empty seats. So the NFL said, okay, let's help Bill. And, you buy a season ticket, you get into the lottery, maybe you win a Super Bowl ticket for 1993. So they do this in March of 1990. But there was a problem. And the problem dates back to 1983 when Ronald Reagan officially announced the formation of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. birthday. And I say that because Larry McCoy, my former editor at CBS, said that's his name. I said, okay, thank you. Anyway, so 86, there is a holiday. Bruce Babbitt, the governor, signs it into law, but there's a new governor in 1987 named Evan Meacham, and he cancels the holiday. And John McCain supports him. McCain said that was the worst mistake he ever made in his career. Bidwell would take the team to Tempe in 1988. The NFL wasn't too concerned about the big game or even Cardinals games. Stevie Wonder then would announce he would boycott performing in Arizona. Convention planners say, we're out of here. They bypass the state. The battle is on. 1989. The state legislature, Arizona state legislature, passed legislation to create a state holiday honoring King, but opponents managed to get enough signatures on the petition to get voters in the state to decide on whether or not to honor King in November 1990. Arizona voters were told by the NFL, you overturn this thing, you overturn this legislation, and we will give you the Super Bowl. If you overturn the legislation, rather, we will pull the Super Bowl 27 from Tempe, and we will move it. 1990, that's what they did, and the NFL went to Pasadena, California. In 1992, the NFL said, okay, all right, you failed us in 1990, but here's the deal. 1992, past the holiday, we'll give you the next big game available, which would be 1996. Arizona voters said yes, and in March of 1993, I was there, Tempe was given the game in 1996. Now, here's a question for you. Whitney Houston, is it live or is it Memorex? Give it 10 seconds. Was that anthem live or Memorex? If you remember, because it was the Giants playing Buffalo, wide right, my old buddy Jim Gordon, who I loved, adored Jim Gordon. Norwood, wide right. Giants won. So anyway, was it real or was it on tape? Let's answer that. Jim Steig is an old buddy of mine, and he was with the NFL, and he produced Super Bowls. In early January, that's 1991, our coordinator of the Super Bowl pregame activities, Bob Best, produced a recording of the Florida Orchestra for national anthem producer Ricky Weiner. A week later, Weiner flew to Los Angeles to have Whitney record the vocal track. Amazingly, it was done in one take. Not too many remember that the Carolina Panthers lost to the New England Patriots 32-29 in the 2004 game in Houston, Texas. It's a long time ago. It's 18 years ago, but people still remembered what happened between Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson. It was the costume malfunction. It was halftime of the 2004 game, and it causes a political football and changes how TV and radio present programming. It really did, because the Disney ABC showing of Saving Private Ryan is impacted. The FCC acts. Now, here's what happened at halftime of that game. Justin Timberlake grabs Jackson in a dance routine and accidentally forces her dress to open, which revealed one of her breasts. It was only 9/16 of a second. She went like that immediately. But there was some early form of social media in those days. If you might remember, AOL instant messaging, Yahoo messaging, and Pal Talk. Remember them? And people started talking to one another and said, hey, did you see what I saw? No, what did you see? Did you see the halftime show? Do you have TiVo? Yeah, I have TiVo. Go back to the halftime show. Oh, yeah, what happened? And slow it down, and slow it down, and slow it down, and slow it down. Whoops, there it is, the 9/16 of a second. Politicians derided Viacom CBS. CBS was the rights holder of that game. And it was farmed out to the MTV unit of Viacom, which produced the halftime show. Within 15 hours, politicians gathered on the steps of the Capitol in Washington, D.C., pointing their finger at Jackson, pointing their finger at CBS and MTV for doing something immoral. Amazingly enough, there was no finger pointing at Justin Timberlake. Then the hammer came down on CBS, the Republican Federal Communications Commission majority, and I only say that because whoever is in the White House at that point, what party, they get the majority swing vote, number 3, on the Federal Communications Commission, 5-person commission. And they get involved and they fine Viacom CBS $550,000 and change indecency rules. Viacom CBS fought the fines for 7 years and they won. They spent more money on legal fees than they did on the fine. Saving Private Ryan. Steven Spielberg film starring Tom Hanks, Saving Private Ryan, Edward Burns, Matt Damon, and Tom Sizemore. The FCC raised the amount stations and networks could be docked for what can be termed questionable images and dirty words after the Super Bowl. In 2004, television stations were scared off by the prospects of fines. 66 ABC TV affiliates, mostly in the southern U.S., did not show Saving Private Ryan on Easter Sunday because of foul language concerns. The TV stations didn't want to risk a fine. Saving Private Ryan had won 5 Academy Awards following the film's release in 1998. It had been on Disney ABC twice, 2001, 2002. Needless to say, military veterans groups were furious with the stations, and Disney ABC said, "Now we'll pay the fines. We'll pay the fines of the 66 stations if the FCC decides to dock them." Now, the movie had been on twice before, 2001, 2002. After those airings, the FCC ignored one foul language complaint about the movie in 2002. So the NFL says, we're going to do the safe acts. No more problems. We're in Jacksonville and we'll get Paul McCartney. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album was acid tainted, which they admitted. And of course, he spent 9 days in the Huzgao in Tokyo in 1980 because of pot. And he also spent a lot of time paying fines for pot, he and Linda. But he was a safe act. He was a very safe act, even though John Lennon said he took thousands of acid trips back in the 1960s. This is a safe act too. There's Rodney Wood. Keith got busted, and the guy looking up to the heavens is, of course, Keith Richards. And of course, Keith claimed he took every drug under the sun. There's safe act. The Who, another safe act. Roger Daughtry, Pete Townsend, but not with Keith Moon. That's Zach Starkey, Ringo's kid, drum kit, and you don't see the bass player. John Entwistle was the bass player. Keith Moon was the drummer, and they both died. Complications from drugs. Keith Moon, legal drugs, trying to lose weight, trying to get off the stuff. And Entwistle, a bit older because of coke. But they were a safe act, even though 2 of the original 4 members were dead. Bruce Springsteen, Mariah Carey, Michael Jackson, Madonna, Prince, Justin Timberlake twice, even after 2004. Beyonce, Jennifer Lopez, Janet Jackson, Paul McCartney, The Stones, The Who, Whitney Houston, Prince, Lady Gaga have performed during the event's pregame and halftime ceremonies. And regrettably, there's no more Up With People as the halftime show. And that is me with Marcus Allen. 1983 Super Bowl MVP. That was done February 1st, 1984 at the Waldorf Astoria. And this is my old boss, John Mammon. And he thought my wife, Brenda, there was Monica Lewinsky. Who put Weiner's wife's head on Monica Lewinsky's body? Hey, my wife was... No, who put Weiner's wife's head on Monica Lewinsky's body? Hey, my wife was flattered. She was in her 40s. And she was, 24 years old? Pinky and John. As far as the economics of the game, they don't make sense. The NFL takes all the revenue, and then the host cities absorb all of the risk of all the games. You find places like Glendale, Arizona in 2008 put up $3 million for the game and got back $1 million in taxes. As far as the economic impact of the game is concerned, 300 million, 500 million, whatever they pull out of a hat. Yeah, sure, there are waitresses and waiters and taxi cab drivers and now Uber drivers probably, and parking lot valet attendants. They make extra money, chambermaids and all that. But unless your hotel or motel is local, you're not going to get all the money. It goes back to a home office. Same thing with restaurants and things of that nature. Yeah, a lot of money is spent, but like car rental, for a car rental, you generally get a Hertz budget, whatever it is, it goes back to the home base. It doesn't stay in the community. Very little stays in the community. So the question is the Super Bowl worth it or not? They're still paying the debt on Giant Stadium, which was built in opened in 1976. Mega events never break even, never break even. But you'll hear politicians say, yeah, but look at all the free publicity we got. Cincinnati this year, according to the Cincinnati Business Journal, getting to the AFC Championship game, got $15 million in free publicity. But you can't pay librarians with nothing, because the free publicity means you got nothing. You got no money out of it. Anyway, thank you, Linda, for inviting me. Any questions, any comments? The floor is all yours.
Very, very interesting, especially with it all coming up. So if anybody would like to unmute themselves or put something in the chat if they have a question, Evan definitely covered a lot of history and a lot of different segues. And it was good that we did have a correct answer in the chat.
Yes, we did.
Of your question. So if anybody would like to unmute themselves or put something in the chat if you have any questions right now. No, I think we're going to, I think there could be a debate of what's everybody's favorite.
Oh, Richard trying to get on?
Yeah, I got a fast question. What would the players get for a Super Bowl game now if they win or lose?
Something like 400,000, I think, maybe 500,000, and half of that. So back in that day, it was 13,000 and 8,000.
Right, big difference.
Big difference. And by the way, the church in Swoyersville was renovated thanks to Lou Michaels' money.
Great presentation. I like the information. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's not about the game.
Right.
Okay, then I think that does it. So again, thank you very much, Evan. And I think it's coming up in another week or so?
A week from Sunday.
A week from Sunday, and there will be a big halftime show, I'm sure, and lots of commercials.
I know Snoop Dogg is part of it, so.
I know. Now everybody's safe, right? They've got like 5 different people in halftime.
Yeah, he's part of it. So anyway, thank you for inviting me, and thank everybody out there.
Thank you very much for everyone.
And hopefully we can do this again.
Yes, absolutely. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye. Have a good